Hello everyone and welcome to this session by Moshi, the UK Student Services Organisation. I'm here to talk about COVID and beyond for the next 10 minutes. So this will be a brief overview of a few key points. There'll be plenty more to discuss and hopefully we can cover those in questions afterwards. So my name, if I can get this to work, is John Bloomfield and I'm the Executive Director for Moshi. I'm a full-time member of staff along with 3 other staff members. And I work with our executive committee, who is made up of 12 volunteers, made up of the membership of AMOSSHE. I'm going to talk about 4 key areas very briefly. Firstly, about AMOSSHE and what we do, then the key sector challenges from the pandemic, then AMOSSHE initiatives, what we have been doing to support members, and then briefly some of the key aspects of the future of UK student services. So moving on. AMOSSHE is the membership organisation for higher education, student services and student affairs leaders in the UK. And the UK is made up of England, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. We have nearly all publicly funded higher education members, student services in the UK. That's over 180 institutions and that equates to about 800 people. Individuals. We also have some individual and student members as well, but they are few and far between. And on top of that, I should mention we do have some international members, so welcome anyone from the Republic of Ireland, USA, Australia or New Zealand that are joining us today. What do? We share information and good practice with our members. We provide networking opportunities through national and regional meetings and host professional development events for our members. We also inform and influence sector policy by talking to the UK government and devolved governments, the governments of Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, and to make sure that there's a student services perspective on the work, especially critical during these challenging times. We also undertake research with the assistance of our members as well. Members keep up with everything through our weekly newsletters and our website, but if you're not a member, you can sign up to our news through our WordPress blog, and LinkedIn as well. I'm going to try and briefly go through this. So I wanted to highlight just a few key challenges from the pandemic. There are plenty more, and I'm sure people can relate to these. So just briefly, one thing I decided to mention was just some of the challenges around inconsistent and messaging from governments and the disparity around funding for this. So England government, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland all took slightly different approaches to the pandemic in terms of when to close universities and some of the rules and regulations of how they were starting to open up and that transition, but also about the funding they would provide to help support universities and particularly students during this time. We'll come on to that in a bit. Another key thing I wanted to highlight was around student mental health. Moving services online created its own challenges and demands. Members generally found there was increased attendance for appointments for wellbeing and counselling sessions. But also, more importantly, there was an increased complexity of concerns and cases. So looking at this, it's been manageable in terms of an online and virtual environment because of the consistency in, and spread of workload, but there is a concern about what happens when we go back onto campus. There's lots of people at the beginning that did cancel their appointments because they wanted physical interaction. So will that come back when people are back onto campus? Digital poverty is another area we've looked at closely there. It's extremely challenging to understand how to support students during this time. Our members were responsible for allocating funds and equipment to students during this time. A lot of the challenges came around, do you buy laptops and equipment for students? Do you hire them for students? How does that work? There's lack of internet access for a lot of students, especially if they're living outside in rural areas where there's not much support there. And also, obviously, lack of funds, lack of space to be able to study appropriately. So there are lots of challenges. Alongside, I should mention, digital skills. There's been highlighted a gap around digital skills as a result of this. University funding and hardship support as well. So this comes back to government's funding around hardship. So hardship funds are money that put aside and ring-fenced by institutions to provide directly for students that they don't have to pay back, and it's all done through means testing and various measures, where different governments gave differing amounts of money and also requirements of how that money should be spent meant that institutions had to come up with brand new processes very quickly of how to disseminate that money adequately between those students that need it the most. And that was a real challenge for our members. We can talk a bit more about that in Q&A if need be. And the last one in particular I want to mention here is around staff wellbeing and remote support. So staff having to work remotely was a key challenge, and I think we've all found that during the pandemic. Counselling staff needed particular requirements around how that they would manage their one-to-one support for students in virtual sense. There's other organisations that have helped provide resources for that, but the other side is how do managers support those staff and all of their staff to be able to work remotely very quickly. So that has been a huge challenge, and I know that has been reflected globally as well. There's also stuff around academic support and the consistency of approaches to that, which is a challenge, working around accommodation and residential life as well, but I'm not going to get into those right now. So moving on from that, what has AMOSSHE done to help support our members during this time? We've provided online discussion and networking opportunities free of charge to ensure that members had the ability to meet frequently and without barriers to be able to share their knowledge. We also had non-members attend those to make sure they were experts in the room. We have produced reports and statistics for our members, namely around mental health services, and talking again about those demands for that. Student digital poverty reports to understand again, what does digital poverty mean? What does the support needs look like, and sharing the knowledge around that. And also the last one I'll mention is welfare provision during the pandemic. So how were we supporting members more generally? And our members were doing things such as delivering food parcels to students on campus, organising online social events, obviously the wellbeing support, checking into isolated students on more than one occasion to make sure that they were safe and secure, increasing their communications and delivering essential supplies for students among some. Lots of really good initiatives that have happened around this area. A lot of these were linked to our CPD and professional development events that all moved online to ensure that members had the opportunity to digest these reports, but also then share and discuss what that meant for their context. The final thing that we did a lot of, and we continue to do so, is working with the governments to ensure that they understand the context of student services and the support needed for students, especially during this time, and also external organisations in terms of what they can supply. So initiatives such as Student Space, which is an online web presence platform for students in England and Wales to access a variety of support measures, and that's still online now, so you can go and see that. So finally, what does this mean for the future of UK student services, certainly in the short term? So just a few points that I wanted to highlight here. In England, students are returning to campus full-time from the 17th of May. It's very close to the end of the academic year, but they are doing it anyway. Many students are actually, across all the nations, are already moving back into university areas, even though they can't go onto campus because they are eager to try and have some kind of university experience this year that's not online. For Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, those timelines have changed, but also then the expectations of what can and can happen on campus will change as well. So lots of challenges there. Also of concern is the transition for new students coming onto campus in the new academic year, and also those that didn't get a proper transition last year as well. The challenge around complex mental health issues and the potential rise in cases as well. How do student services adequately manage that and manage those expectations, especially because a lot of departments are having reduced budgets this year because of the amount institutions had to spend during the height of the pandemic to support students. So cutting of budgets but increasing services is a challenge for everyone, I think we'll agree. Staff anxiety and the call for more flexible working. So some institutions have put in place an initiative across their institution around flexible working, which is very difficult to manage for front-facing services. And so they're working through the challenges there, and we're helping them to do that. But also understanding how to provide hybrid service models as well as online, as well as physical space around counselling, around wellbeing and such like. And finally, ensuring that adequate support across academic departments and professional services, and ensuring that people understand what that means. I think that's about my 10 minutes up. So I'm going to leave you with this page that shows how you can get in touch with us, and I'll open up to questions. Thank you for your time.